Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brie, and today's video I wanted to talk about things I like in books. Being new to booktube, I've been exposed to a lot of new books and different books, and so I feel like I've been honing what I really like in books, which has been hard for me. And so I wanted to kind of talk through some of the things I think I like in books and to get some recommendations from you guys about what I should be reading. And I feel like the second half of the year has really helped me to shift more into what I think I like, and I'm still always exploring, but yeah, let's get into the video. So if you've been around for a little bit on this channel, you might know that I love found family, and that's the first thing I want to talk about. I love found family elements. I haven't met a book that has a good found family and not liked it. So like Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, this has found family elements with a bunch of girls. And then we have Howl's Moving Castle, which I guess is maybe a looser found family, but it's following Sophie, and she's kind of having like her own story of understanding her own powers, but she moves in with Howl in his moving castle, and there's a bunch of people in there, and they kind of become a family. Then The House in the Cerulean Sea, I feel like is ultimate like found family vibes, and this is following orphaned kids and Linus, who is a caseworker in the department of in charge of magical youth. That was hard for me to say. And this just gave me all the found family vibes. And then also Every Heart a Doorway has huge found family vibes. I think I like found family when it has some like magic. All these have like a little bit of magical elements, but I wouldn't say they're like heavy on the fantasy. I read in the past other books that were more fantasy that have found family, like The Lies of Locke Lamora and things like that, and I did really enjoy them as well. But I think the ones that really stick with me are these, which are lighter in the fantasy but heavy in the found family. And you could argue sometimes they don't have as strong of plots, but are just focused on found family. And I think that that's kind of what I lean toward. But I'm open to any found family suggestions because it's just something that I really resonate with, I think. So I feel like you'll see a lot of similar books throughout the video just because I think a lot of the things fit into multiple categories. I wanted to next talk about mysteries with like speculative elements. Now traditionally I think I've gravitated towards more of a fantasy speculative, like magic, but I think I could potentially get into maybe a sci-fi if it's not too sci-fi, or playing with time or things like that. So this is an example of one that I think I would categorize more in the speculative slash like sci-fi because it's playing with time. Basically the main character is trying to solve a murder, and each day he's in a different body of someone who was at the party and is seeing the day from their perspective while trying to figure out the murder. So it plays with time a lot, and I really loved that aspect of it. I think it made the mystery so good for me. I don't usually give mysteries 5 stars, but because of like this element, it just made it so unique and different for me that I loved it. So that's an example of speculative mystery. Again, The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. I love this for how it has like a lot of it's the scientists, the daughters of scientists. I like that element where it's not very heavy on a fantasy or like magic, but it still brings that little bit of like science speculative element to it. This one just has a touch of it, but it's one of my favorite books of last year, and that's Firekeeper's Daughter. And mostly this is a mystery and set in Michigan, the UP, but it has like some touches of these little speculative like folklore kind of elements to it of the Anishinaabe community, and so it talks about like little people and things like that, and I really liked that addition in here. I just think it brought to life more of the culture that Angeline Boulley is talking about in here, and so I really like that addition to it. I think it really made part of the book for me. And then like this mystery it's actually a thriller more, but it has like a paranormal element to it, which I would consider more speculative, and I really enjoy Simone St. James and the way she adds paranormal to her stories. So these are all ones with speculative elements, and I just haven't read enough of them, but these are the mysteries that I really have gravitated towards because they include those things. And so I would love to have more recommendations of that. I've been really trying to find some, and I have a few on my list. So like one I have on my TBR is The Conductors by Nicole Glover, and this has some speculative elements, but it's like mostly mystery. It was in the fantasy section, but it seems like mystery with magical elements. So if you have recommendations like something like this or the other ones that you think I might like, I would really love to hear them. So I have two things that I think kind of combine, so I'm going to start with part of it and then elaborate from there. So the first part is I think I like retellings, but I'm very specific about the kind of retellings I like. So I'm not sure. I think I know what these all have in common, but I may be wrong. So I think I gravitate towards retellings that are a bit darker. So I read The House of Salt and Sorrow before I was on BookTube, and I really enjoyed it. I like how it's like a dark fairy tale retelling, and then Nettle and Bone. So these are like the other thing where I like, I think, dark fairy tales or dark fairy tale retellings, because this isn't technically a retelling, but it has that like fairy tale vibe, and this is a retelling, and I really liked it. I think I just like darker kind of retellings. So I read Spinning Silver and The Bear and the Nightingale, which are their own kind of retellings in ways, and I didn't like them as much because I felt like they were too lyrical for me and too like whimsical that I couldn't understand what was going on, where darker retellings are a little bit easier to follow and can have that eerie fairy tale feeling while I still can like follow along with it, if that makes sense. Going along with retellings, I also really liked A Study in Scarlet Women, which is a like reimagining of Sherlock Holmes, but if Sherlock Holmes was a woman. And I really enjoyed this. I really need to continue on this series, but I really liked the first one. I just think taking that classic story and like turning it into something a little bit different is really fun for me. And you're going to see this one a lot, I feel like, because it's one of my favorite books. But this is also kind of a retelling of sorts, because you have Sherlock Holmes and Watson in it, and you have the daughters of scientists that are known, like Jekyll, Frankenstein, who else? Moreau, Dr. Moreau, Rappaccini, I think is how you pronounce it. So like all of those are present in this, and I just find that really fun and compelling, and it like lets you kind of know what you're getting into, because if you know the stories, you kind of can have some expectations of it going in, but you can still have fun with it. So if you have any recommendations of retellings that are kind of like maybe Sherlock, it seems like I gravitate towards Sherlock, or something like this, I would love your recommendations. And then if you have more like dark fairy tale stories, whether it's retelling or just a newer fairy tale, I would really like it. So then I'm going to talk about mysteries. I like mysteries, but I think I like specific kinds of mysteries. So I like mysteries with like a sleuthing duo, but not necessarily detective, more like amateur sleuths. So the Murder on Black Swan Lane, the Rexford and Sloane series, I really like these two unlikely people coming together and trying to solve murders. And it's also historical, which is part of the reason why I like it, but I just like the sleuthing duo dynamic. And another example is like the Thursday Murder Club. This is about a group of retired folks, and they come together to solve mysteries on Thursdays at their club. And I just find this like really fun and have a good time with like amateur detectives. I think another example of that is Finlay Donovan is Killing It. I really liked this, and it's following Finlay and Vero, and they not really sleuthing as much as they get wrapped up in a mystery, but they are kind of like a sleuthing duo. I think a lot of the stories that I found that I really gravitate towards with mysteries have that dynamic to it. So I know I have more, I just can't think of them right now. But another side part to mysteries that I like is, I think that I like historical mysteries, but it's going to get kind of specific. I don't like historical mysteries that you follow social events a lot. So ones that take place primarily at like sit down events or dinners or balls and stuff like that. Because I read a lot of like Regency historical mysteries, and I don't like the ones as much that you have to go to a lot of those like events, which I guess is more realistic, but it's just not my thing. I don't like the social gathering side of things as much. I much prefer the mystery side of things with like good friendships. So some examples of those are Murder on Black Swan Lane, obviously, the Rexford and Sloane series, the Verity Kent series. This is set more in present day, so it's more 1920-ish almost. And while this has some like social gathering, it's much more focused on the mystery aspect than just socializing. And then Dead Dead Girls is 1920s Harlem Renaissance, and this is less to do with social events and much more to do with the mystery. And I did enjoy this, not as much as the other ones, but I did have a good time. And then this one's medieval, and she is kind of like a coroner, but they weren't called that. And I like that the focus was on that and her like looking at the bodies and trying to figure out what happened, rather than events. Now this is medieval, so too there's not as much of like the balls and things like that. But these are the kind of historical mysteries that I go back to when I think about the ones I really enjoy, versus things like I've read Death of a Dishonorable Gentleman, and I didn't like that as much because it was much more focused on just socializing. And then there's been other ones where balls are a big part of it, and I just don't gravitate towards that. So if you have any historical mysteries that focus more on the mystery and the friendships but are historical and not necessarily cozy, though I do like cozies sometimes, yeah, I think a little bit darker, not overly dark, but focused on friendships and the science or a specific type of investigating, I really like. Still with the mystery theme are kind of cozy mysteries, but more on like the side of ridiculous. So this one I think is closest to a cozy mystery is the Thursday Murder Club, because it is like a group and it's got some humor in it, but it's still kind of like that cozy whodunit type style. Though I feel like darker themes are explored in here, and that's why I liked it. I think sometimes super cozy mysteries just aren't a hit for me because I need a little bit more to them than just like the good friendship vibes. So that's why I think I gravitate towards like more ridiculous cozy, because this one is like you really have to suspend your disbelief, but I really like it because it's just fun and you get this like fun family dynamic and ridiculousness that just makes you like laugh and have a good time. And then Finley Donovan is like my favorite out of all these, and it's ridiculous and over the top, and it just made me laugh out loud. And that's what I really liked from this mystery. And yeah, it's just like I think I need some more like laughter from my mysteries in my life. So we're getting into the last two, which are something I've been trying to dive into this past year, which is horror. And I'm not exactly sure where I am with horror because I don't think I'm a super gruesome horror reader, and I don't think I'll ever be that. And I think I could get into some weird horror, but I haven't really given it a shot. But I do think I like horror with paranormal. So I've read 2 Grady Hendrix. Both of them are paranormal, and I gave them both 4 stars, and I enjoyed the time I spent with them. I like a vampire story, I think, and I like the exorcism side of things, but they aren't super scary. So if you have any recommendations for like kind of paranormal creature-y horror, I think I could get into that. Then I read The Historian, which is technically a horror, and while I think it was a little long for my taste, I really enjoyed like the academic and dark eeriness of this whole book. I like that it was like, again, kind of a retelling because it's about Dracula. It was just a slow burn that like built up this tension that I really enjoyed about it. And I would say like the last like bit is what I really had a good time with. So maybe a little faster pace, but something in this vein. And then I also really enjoyed The Only Good Indians. I think this was a good length for it. I think longer than this, I might not enjoy it as much. But this was about like, this has like a kind of ghost spirit-y element to it. I don't really want to say more than that to give it away, but I really enjoyed that element to it and the way that Stephen Graham Jones brought it into the story. And it was just very unsettling, but not overly gruesome. So I like something like this. He did write My Heart is a Chainsaw, which brings some of that like speculative paranormal-y element into it at the end, and I actually really enjoyed that part of it, but the other part of the book, I just didn't love the slasher side of things as much. So if you have any like recommendations for paranormal-y horror like this. I also think witches is something I really like. I want to get to the Year of the Witching, but I haven't yet. I'm saving it for fall. But I think witches or vampires or like monster-y horror could be for me, but something not as over the top as some books can be, if that makes sense. Maybe cozy horror, maybe not, but Frankenstein type things I would really like. Again, a retelling horror story I could probably get into. And then the last kind of horror slash paranormal slash mystery, anything to do with ghosts, I think I'm into. I think I haven't really read any like metaphorical ghost stories, so maybe I could get into that too. But I think like real ghost stories I enjoy. So like the Book of Cold Cases or The Sundown Motel, as I've said before, I really like Simone St. James's writing, and I like the way that she writes paranormal ghost stories. And then a middle grade I really liked was Ophi's Ghost. This is one I keep going back to that I don't recommend enough. This is by Justina Ireland, and this is following Ophi, who can like see ghosts, and she's trying to solve a mystery of a ghost that's in a manor that she's working at. And I really liked the story it told and the way it told it through interacting with ghosts. It was so well done, and I really enjoy a ghost story, especially like a middle grade ghost story I think I could really get into. And I wish I had more ghost stories to talk about than just these 3. I probably do, and I'm just not thinking about it. I've read stories where it's like, is it a ghost or is it a real killer? And I don't think I like when it turns out to be like a real killer behind all of it. But I think I could get into ghost stories that are more ambiguous, that maybe it's more of a figment of the imagination, that kind of, is it a ghost or is it not a ghost story, versus like a thriller and the plot device is like, is it haunted, but it's really not, it's just like a serial killer or a killer. I think those are less for me, but maybe I could get into the others. But yeah, I don't have enough ghost recommendations. So yeah, these are some books that I've read and really liked that are ghosts, and I would love some recommendations. So really quickly before we end, I just want to give some examples of books I picked up that I think are going to have these elements that I think I could like, just to give you an idea, maybe a bit more of what I like in books or think I like in books. One of them is The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon, which is like kind of Frankenstein-y creature kind of horror, but it's supposed to be lighter. Then I have A Witch Story, which is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, and this is like a witchy story back in like Salem witch trial times, and it sounds really good. I feel like I'm gonna really like this horror. Then What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which is a retelling of the Fall of the House of Usher, so it's a horror retelling and it's a novella, which I think I like. And then we've got The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which is kind of like a portal. I think it's got like speculative elements to it to make it horror, which is something I think I like. It plays with that speculative element that I think I'm gonna enjoy. Then got some YA Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand, which I don't know too much about, but I think it's about a bunch of girls and a killer, and I think it's got some speculative elements to it, so like mystery with speculative. I've got House of Hollow, which seems dark fairy tale-y, but also more speculative leaning, so it seems to combine 2 fairy tale and speculative mystery element to it. I think it's girls go missing for some time, and when they come back they're very beautiful, but things are kind of weird. Small Favors, which again is kind of like a horror, not retelling, but kind of fairy tale-y vibes as well. And then Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power, and I think this is speculative as well, about a girl who goes back to her hometown where she was born, and there's some speculative elements and a mystery. I'm not too sure, but I was reading, or I saw someone recommend this, and it felt like something that would be in that speculative mystery genre for me. Then I've got Ghostwood Song, which seems to play with like some speculative fantasy type stories along with a mystery, but leans a little more fantasy, so I'm interested to see how I like this. Those are some examples that I have on my list of books I want to read. And so if you have any recommendations of things like that, I would love it if you could leave it down in the comments. But yeah, those are all the books I have for things that I love. I am trying to really figure out my reading taste, and so I would love any recommendations you might have. I would love it if you would subscribe or like this video if you liked it, and I will see you next time.